You have a Chrysler or Dodge product, like a Chrysler 200, Dodge Dart, or maybe a Dodge Journey, and you have heat on your driver's side and cool air coming out of the passenger side, chances are you have a clogged up heater core. And in this video, I'm going to give you a lot of tips and tricks on how to change this out yourself. You're going to save about $2,000 from going to a dealership, and you're going to get heat blowing out evenly on both driver and passenger side. So follow along step by step and we'll get this heater core changed out. Much room to work under the dash, and especially if you're kind of half hanging out of the car, half hanging in the car, makes it a real pain on the body as well. So the first thing that I do that only takes about 5 extra minutes is completely remove the driver's seat. And then you can basically lay in the bottom of the car across the floor. It makes it a lot easier on your body and gives you a lot more room to work. So we're going to go ahead and remove the driver's seat. And that's one of the best tips I can give you. It's going to be a lot easier to work on and save your body. To remove the seat, you have a couple of plastic covers on each side, and we have an 18mm bolt. All we have to do is unscrew that. I'm going to tip the seat up, unplug the electrical connector, and just rotate the seat and bring it right out the car. Now that all 4 bolts are out that are holding the seat down, you have to remove the seat belt. Now you just lift straight up on that plastic cover, and then you have a T45 bolt. Undo that and the seat belt comes right undone. And now we can fold the seat up a little bit and rotate it right out of the vehicle. So easily under 10 minutes, we have the front seat removed. Just 4 bolts. You got 2 electrical connectors. All you do is push down on the push pins to release those. Rotate the seat, comes right out. Now we have all kinds of room to lay down in the car and work on. So we're not laying half on the floor, half in the car. This is a huge plus when doing this job. So now to give us a little better access and to see a little bit better, we're going to remove this lower trim panel right here. In order to do that, we have to remove this side piece. And if you have one of these body molding tools, they're just kind of a plastic tapered end plastic tool that you can get behind stuff like this and pop it right out of place. So we're going to remove this. There's going to be a screw in here, and then there's just a couple clips under here so we can remove this lower piece. So we got a screw right there we need to remove. A couple of plastic trim pieces under here. They're just little like plastic pop fasteners, and then this will come straight down. All right, so now we have a couple trim pieces we need to remove. You're going to see this trim piece right here like this, and you just have one of these push fasteners. So all you have to do is pull on that, remove that piece, and then if you could see right there, we have 1 screw to remove right there, and then we're going to remove this trim piece right here, and that's going to give us access to the heater core. All right, so now that you have the screw removed, you can remove this air deflector. So we'll get that out of the way. And then you'll see that cable right there. It's kind of in the way, it's just more of an annoyance. You can move it around to get it out of your way if you need to, but I like to zip tie it to the accelerator pedal and just keeps it out of your way. So as you can see right there is the heater core. So now we're going to start working on prying those flanges out so that we can move the aluminum tubes out of the way and slide out the heater core. All right, so at this point, I'm ready to start working on loosening up those flanges. Now I've got cardboard on the floor. I've got some old towels stuffed under here. You are gonna lose some radiator fluid. So you can either put some plastic down or some oil absorbent mats, whatever you need to, so that the radiator fluid does not get on the carpet. I just want to kind of show you what I'm doing. I have this screwdriver right here, and I'm just kind of working this flange open, going around the entire thing like this. Now all that flange is doing is just holding that tube in place. There's an O-ring inside there. Now this is soft aluminum. It's probably like 3003 grade aluminum. So you want a screwdriver that's about 1/4 of an inch wide. You just go all the way around it like this, open that flange up, and once that's open, I'm just going to pull on this tube and it's going to come right loose. So just keep going around. I'll do the bottom first and then I'll do the top. I have the bottom one undone. As you can see right there, I've got the flange all opened up. And then you got to put one hand on the heater core, the other hand on the tube, and just give it a pull and it will pop right out of there. Now that's the easy one. The upper one is a little bit harder. So I'm going to go ahead and do that one next. Now this lower one took maybe about 7 minutes. You just want to go slow. You don't want to tear that aluminum up, and you definitely don't want to bend the flange on that tube. So just go slow at this point. All right, so as you can see, I've got the top one out. I'll see if I can bring the camera over on this side and show you this angle here too. So this is kind of looking underneath the steering wheel. You'll see that I just kind of pushed that top tube up and out of the way. You can move those tubes around a little bit. You're not going to hurt anything. Now there are O-rings on those old tubes next to that flange. You should be able to see that one right there. You're going to want to remove those old O-rings, and when you disassemble the new heater core, put those O-rings on, and you're going to want to use some O-ring grease. So we'll go ahead and continue sliding the heater core straight out. The heater core is completely out. I just got it kind of resting on that brake pedal to show you guys in the video. I just got to move it out a little more to the left and slide it around that cable. And then we'll go ahead and start with the disassembly of the new heater core. This is the old heater core right here. I'm just going to kind of show you a close-up of those flanges. So this is the bottom one right here. As you can see, this is kind of tore up a little bit, which doesn't really matter. You just don't want to damage the flanges on those tubes. This was the top one. As you can see, I didn't have it totally rounded out, but I just gave it a quick tug and it pops right out of there. Now what you want to do is make sure that these are exactly the same, exact same size. Now what we need to do is we need to remove these tubes from the heater core. Now once you remove these tubes, it might be kind of hard to figure out which is the top, which is the bottom. So I wrote on here in Sharpie, you can see right here top with an arrow up to here. So once I remove these tubes, I'm going to slide this in just like this. So it's going to go in the exact same way as it did from the factory. Now if you'll notice, this is crimped just in a little bit different style. Looks like it's crimped a little bit harder than the factory. It's kind of got like a real hard stamp. This will take a little bit longer to open up. We just want to make sure that we don't damage this part on this heater core. Doesn't matter about the old one. But the new one, now you want to be even more careful. But it's going to be a little easier because it's not in the car. And also when we remove these tubes, there's going to be O-rings on there. We're going to want to put those O-rings on the old tubes that are back in the car. Now you might think this might leak. Well, as you can see, these tubes are meant to slide around. These are greased on both sides. All these flanges is just holding that tube and O-ring in. It's not sealing anything. It's just holding it tight in place. That's why these can move around. They're supposed to do that. So once this job is done, it's not going to leak, so don't worry about it. So let's start opening up the flange on this heater core and get these tubes removed. As flathead screwdrivers, you're just going around like this, opening this flange up very slowly. Just move like an 1/8 inch at a time. Now once it's mostly opened up, you can just kind of wiggle this. It will pop right out, and that's the O-ring we're going to want to reuse. Now I just need to do the top side. All right, now that I've got both tubes removed, I got my heater core labeled. As you can see, these flanges aren't very round. Now we want to get those as round as possible, and we want to make sure they're the right size, because you don't want to stick this in there and not be able to get those new tubes in. So if I look at the old tubes, I have my caliper right here. They're 935 thousandths. Or if you want to know the metric, 23.7 millimeters. So the inside of this has to be at least that diameter, and it has to be round. Otherwise, putting this in underneath there is going to be a real pain in the butt. So what you can do, you start out with a smaller socket and work your way bigger. So So this 17 millimeter socket, and these might be different, and you might have thicker wall sockets. I'm just using this as an example. Is 936 thousandths in diameter. So it's only 2 thousandths bigger than what I need. So at least this socket has to fit all the way in there and be nice and round. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out a couple sockets smaller, just stick them in there, and all you got to do is spin them. You can put a little bit of lubrication on your socket to help as well, and just keep going up and up in size until this is round and it's big enough to accept that flange. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next. At this point, I have these two flanges opened up. I also use the old ones to make sure they slide in very easily. Now I have the new O-rings installed on the old pipes inside the car. Now make sure that you clean those off and put new O-ring grease on there. Now this thing could have been sitting on the shelf for maybe a year, maybe 2 years, who knows. But that O-ring grease may have been dried up a little bit. So I'm gonna put O-ring grease on the new O-rings. Use a liberal amount. Don't go, skimpy on the O-ring grease. I also greased the old tubes before I put the O-ring on it. I also put O-ring grease inside these flanges. Now we're ready to go ahead and slide this back into place. The new heater core right there, it's partially slid into place. Now those two tubes are behind the heater core. Now you want to reach behind there with one hand and make sure that those tubes are not scratching or rubbing against the heater core as you slide it into place. Just wiggle it a little bit, push a little bit. There should not be any tension, and just make sure that nothing is getting scratched or tore up as you slide that in. Because those two tubes behind there, if you don't have them in the right place, they could be resting on there. So I'll go ahead and do that next. Now I've got the heater core slid into place, and you'll see the two tubes. You'll see that top one basically just popped right into place. Now we need to push it in and then start folding that flange around to secure it. Now that bottom one's about 1 inch or 2 away. Now you might need to rotate that. If you bent it while you were trying to pull it out, that might be a problem. But I just need to go up in there and kind of move that. It's like a heavy cable right there. I need to move that out of the way a little bit so that I can get that pushed into place. And then we'll go ahead and we're going to crimp that back onto that flange in 4 places. I want to show you the progress. There is the bottom, and of course that's the easier one. And what I've been using is these needle nose pliers. Now you don't need to cramp this all the way around. Remember how we took it apart? It was only cramped in 4 places. So all you got to do is kind of fold it over a little bit, and then you're going to squeeze really hard in them small areas. All you're doing is holding that pipe into that flange. You're not sealing it with this. The O-ring is there to seal it. So now I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on the top. As you can see, there's the bottom one right there and the top one right there. Now the top one, I put needle nose pliers on there so that the heater core would not move, and I kind of pushed it in a little bit. And then I had to come through the top and actually just give it a little bit of a pound with a hammer. And I'll show you how I did that. So you have this opening right here, and what I used was kind of use something long, and you kind of line it up right there, and then you can come out here and tap it with a hammer. And I just used a square drive bit just to tap those in place. But that pretty much looks like a factory. Install is pretty well complete. If you want to go ahead and start up your car, turn your heater on full blast, run it for a little bit and make sure you have no leaks. It'd be a lot easier to fix now than after we put everything back in. So go ahead, run the car and check for leaks. To bleed the air out of the cooling system. Now since we've opened up the heater core, we've allowed air into those heat tubes. That allowed air into the cooling system, and we need to get that air out. So you're going to open your hood, we'll pop up the engine cover, and on the passenger side, we're going to see the thermostat housing, and there's going to be a bleed screw on top. So we're going to start the car, you'll turn on heater full blast. We'll turn that screw counterclockwise, and it's going to bleed the air out. So you're going to want to put a catch pan or some type of oil absorbent towels or something under the car. And we're going to bleed out the cooling system. Now it's going to take about 1 minute. It's kind of going to spit and sputter as it gets all the air out as the fluid works through. And we're just going to close up the screw, and then we'll start putting everything else back together. All right, so right over here on the passenger side, you're going to see right here is the thermostat housing. That's the bleed screw right there. We're going to turn this counterclockwise. And you're going to start to see the fluid come out of there, and you're just going to wait for it to stop spitting and sputtering. You can see it's kind of spitting out some air right there. This is going to take about 1 minute. Now we'll just close that bleed screw up, and we'll continue putting all the trim pieces back together. All right, I've left that bleed screw open for about 1 minute. I don't see any more air bubbles coming out. I've got the engine cover back on. Now we can close up the hood. And now we know that we have the air bled out of the system. We have no leaks. We're good to go. At this point, I've got the air deflector put back in. That's held in by that one screw. I've got the cable pushed back into place. I have that lower cover back into place with a little push fastener. Now we're going to go ahead and install the lower steering column pad. And then last, we're going to put this cover on here, and then all we have left is to put the seat back in. All right, I've got the lower steering wheel bezel back on. You have that push fitting right there. And then don't forget you have the little screw right here. Now putting this back in, getting it back around here is kind of tricky. If you start at the bottom with the steering trim panel and slide it up, that's what makes it go in a heck of a lot easier. Then all you gotta do is push it in. Now all we got left to do is put this panel on. This one's not very easy to put on either. You kind of gotta pull this rubber back and push it in at the same time. Just take your time, but it will pop right back in. Putting this panel back in, this is where one of these molding tools comes in place. So I've got it kind of started there at the top. I've got it started at the bottom. I'm just gonna slide this molding tool up, and it's gonna pop the rubber right back on that trim piece. Piece on, the only thing left to do is put the seat back in. The seat back in place. I just have the 4 seat mounting bolts kind of hand tight. You don't want to tighten those down until you have all 4 in. Now I have the seat belt bolted up. Now to make sure your seat belt's not twisted, I suggest you click it in over there, and then you can make sure that this is nice and straight across there. If you turn this around the other way, you're going to have a twist in it. And then there's a slit in this cover piece right here. That's just going to slide right down into place. So I'll put this piece on. I'm going to tighten up the seat. And then don't forget in the front, we have these 2 trim pieces that cover up the front track. All right, we've got the seat completely put back in. I got the trim pieces on up front. This job is pretty much complete. Now the only thing left to do is maybe drive the car around for about 10-15 minutes, come back, let it cool off, and check your antifreeze. Now if your antifreeze was maybe just a hair high when you started, you're only going to lose about a cup of antifreeze when you take this out. So there's really no need to put any in. If you're already low on antifreeze when you started this job, you're definitely going to want to add some antifreeze. So just check that after some driving and some cool down. Other than that, congratulate yourself on saving about $2,000 and a lot of time not having to take it to the dealership. Now I did this job in about 1 hour and 50 minutes. If you've never done one before, just give yourself about 2.5 hours. Make sure you have nothing else set for the day. Maybe you got to run to the tool store, to get some special tool, or maybe you misplaced something. Just give yourself a little bit of extra time and you'll get the job done. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.